So we'll start with the public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive input and comments regarding a substantial amendment to the City of Urbana FY 2020-2024 Consolidated Plan and FY 2022-2023 Annual Action Plan. The substantial amendment to these plans proposes to use community development block grant funds for capital improvement projects, including fire station activities that were not included as part of the original Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Plan submittal. Notice of this public hearing was mailed to the media, emailed to various social service agencies and citizens, and placed on the City of Urbana's website on Wednesday, September 9th, 2022. I now declare this public hearing open. If anyone desires to express their views regarding the proposed substantial amendment to the Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Plan, please come forward and be recognized. Your written comments are also welcome. I see there's no one here to provide input. Was there anything that came in that we need to recognize from email?
We did not receive any
Okay.
email comment.
Okay. So seeing that there are no comments for the public hearing, I now declare the public hearing closed. So now I will call to order the meeting of the Community Development Commission. Braden, do you want to take roll?
Commissioner Jones? Commissioner Green?
Here.
Commissioner Freeman? Commissioner Silvas?
Here.
Commissioner Diana?
Here.
Commissioner Williams?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we have a quorum. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of our previous meeting, which was August 23rd, 2022, and you received those unapproved minutes in your packet. So I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I move to approve.
Thank you, Patty. Is there a second?
Second.
Chris is the second. Is there any discussion of the minutes of our August 23rd, 2022 meeting?
No, I always appreciate how thorough they are, so thank you.
Very thorough this time. Any corrections, comments? Okay. So all in favor of approving the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved as written. And Braden, we don't need a roll vote for that, do we? I don't think so, because we're all here. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Are there any additions to the agenda for this evening?
No additions to the
No
agenda
additions.
this evening.
Okay. And is there any public input? No one is here, but was there anything that was provided in writing?
We have not received any public input
Okay.
via email or writing.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us to the staff report.
Yes. So 2 items on the staff report tonight. So the first is just an update on the home ARP allocation plan process. So this is the plan that we brought to you a couple times over the course of the summer. So just a refresher, this is the $3 million in American Rescue Plan Act funding that the city and county received from HUD. To specifically support homeless services and shelter as well. So it's a very unique one-time pot of funding that we will be able to use to address housing insecurity and homelessness in Champaign County. So as you all know, we had to develop an allocation plan, which we contracted with RPC to do sort of that, public engagement process, gap analysis process, and we presented that plan to you back at the beginning of the summer. City Council has approved that plan, and it'll actually be submitted to HUD either today or tomorrow. Sheila's hard at work trying to get that thing submitted in the system to HUD. And then the next step will just be waiting. It's about They say about a 45-day period for HUD to approve that. And then once it's approved, we can move forward with, issuing RFPs for local agencies in the community that provide homelessness or housing services that want to apply for funding through this program. So when we start, we'll keep you updated on what that RFP process will look like. And then once we receive applications, those will all come before you for a vote before they go to City Council. So we expect that process to happen probably in December, when we'll hopefully have applications to bring to you for approval. And then we hope to be able to start issuing agreements beginning of the year. So it's a quick process, but we really want to get the money out there into the community because there's a lot of need for sure. So any questions about that process or? No, this is just an update. Again, the next action will really be needing from you is approval of those agreements once we have them. And then the next item is, I know it's hard to believe, but the annual action planning process for fiscal year 2023-2024 will be beginning soon, which is just hard to believe because I feel like we just finished this current fiscal year's annual action plan. So for some of the newer members, the annual action planning process is a requirement from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The city receives 2 sources of HUD funding: Home Investment Partnership funding and Community Development Block Grant funding. Both of these programs address affordable housing issues in the community and also can be used for various public service programming and community development needs. Our home allocation, we are in a consortium with RPC and the City of Champaign. That allocation tends to be between $750,000 to $800,000 a year, which can be used for affordable housing development, rental assistance, and things like that. The Community Development Block Grant, which is just the City of Urbana, tends to be about between $450,000 to $500,000 a year. And the city uses that money for a variety of different programs and services in the community. Our youth services grant program is funded from CDBG, as well as our neighborhood cleanup days and different services like that. So the annual action plan is required to be submitted at the beginning of every program year. And so the process involves a lot of public input. We need to go to the community, ask them, as we're developing our plan for next year for what we're going to do with this money, we have to show that we're really involving the public and getting their feedback. So what you see in your packet here is a timeline. This is a tentative timeline. It'll be subject to change, as you all know. Meetings get moved around, things like that. But this is our tentative timeline of the public input process and what the kind of the path that we're hoping the annual action plan can take. So at our October meeting on the 25th, we will be holding our first public hearing on the annual action plan, and that will be to hopefully get some citizen feedback on what needs they see in the community and how they want this funding to be used. And then at our January meeting on January 24th, 2023, we'll be holding our second public hearing for that same purpose. We hope to have a solid draft of the plan ready by March 1st, which will then on March 1st be released to the public for a 30-day public comment period. And then we will be presenting the plan at a variety of different community groups. For example, the Champaign County Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless, we presented at that meeting, Champaign County Human Services Council, different groups like that, just to get their feedback from service providers in the community on what needs they're seeing and how they think this money could be utilized. So hopefully around April 1st, that 30-day public comment period will conclude, and then we'll be holding a special meeting in April of the Community Development Commission to approve that final draft, which will then go be forwarded to City Council for City Council approval. So we're hoping to have it submitted to HUD on or around May 1st, and then it'll be hopefully approved July 1 for the start of the 2023-2024 project year. So again, we finish it in July and then we start the whole process over again in September, October. So it's a fun cycle, but that's just an outline of what that will look like. Any questions? Or some of you have been through this process many times, so.
Braden, I was just wondering how you feel that the public comment period, I know it's always a challenge to get people to read it thoroughly enough to provide comment on it. And so I wonder if there are any ways that we could make that a more robust process, or make it more clear to people where they have opportunities for input, or kind of the decision framework, or something that is less daunting than like reading the whole plan and asking if they have comments. I just think, I know you're always welcoming comments, but I know that it's hard to get people to really dig in and then, be thoughtful about how they respond.
Yeah, and that's part of the timeline that will probably change. What we're going to do is, now that kind of COVID is receding and people are going back to having like in-person meetings, we really want to see what community meetings already exist and then go to those people's meetings and ask that we can come and present, there's like various neighborhood associations or groups, different community action groups that meet monthly. And we're hoping to be able to tap into some of those, because in the past, the most feedback we've ever gotten is when we've gone to an existing meeting, a standing meeting in the community, and asked to tag along and present. So, we're still a couple months out, but we'll be kind of checking the calendar and see what groups are meeting and would be willing to host us. We did last year, we presented at a neighborhood meeting, and then we also presented at the Homestead Corporation board retreat. We presented and got some feedback. So those tend to be the best opportunities. Yeah.
What have we seen those other meetings do that we weren't necessarily doing? I guess that opened the door for the communication.
Yeah, well, as you see tonight, usually when we hold public hearings in the city council chambers, we don't get attendance. So the feedback we've gotten when we have gone to community groups has usually been people have never heard, they haven't heard of the information before, which is a great educational opportunity. We got, we typically get feedback about the importance of affordable housing, the need to deal with, issues of homelessness and things like that. So we get great feedback, and we know that it's our responsibility to go where the people are and make sure that they're hearing from us and that we can then hear from them. So we got some feedback about the need for affordable housing developments in kind of different neighborhoods of the city rather than all of it being concentrated in one area. So that was, something that and then all of this feedback we get, we include in the plan. So we report to HUD what people said, what they want to see, and that becomes part of the plan. Yeah.
Thank you, Braden. So you'll just keep plugging along on this schedule, and then we'll work on ways to, I think we could help think of ways to provide you with some access to community groups.
Yeah, and if any of you are connected with, neighborhood groups or community groups, and you want Sheila or I or both of us to come and do our little, we have a little song and dance that we do, we'd be more than happy to. So definitely let us know if you think of groups that might want to hear about what the city's doing with this money, how it's being used, and maybe have some ideas for ways to use it differently.
And then, would you be willing to do that over Zoom too?
Absolutely, and we're still, we've done kind of hybrid things in the past. That's absolutely fine as well.
Thank you.
No. Hey, Brady. There's a group of about 35 Urbana groups that we meet every week. And that might be the shoo-in for you, is be able to meet all of us at the same time.
Yeah,
We meet
absolutely.
every week to try to deal with all the issues in Urbana. And I thought about this. That's what I was hoping would be here tonight, because I was like, when is it? When is it? Because I wanted to make sure that people who have the similar concerns that we do as a city, that we hear from them. That make sense?
Absolutely.
So maybe we can just invite you to that meeting and then give you 10, 15 minutes to say, hey, this is what we're doing, and you get good feedback from, it's all the presidents from, it's everybody across Urbana.
What group is that?
It's a group that started meeting to deal with gun violence,
Oh, yeah.
and then from that, it has spawned into how can we be more aggressive and proactive for the city of Urbana. And so you have partners with OSF, Carl, we're all there at the table. From the judges, Judge Lanalelo, I mean, everybody's there to say, let's talk about this as a community, what can we do together? And so, and people are starting to work together. It's a unique thing. So,
Talking to ABC
um,
with Principal Nance.
part of that, but it's branched off from Nance.
Okay.
So it includes Nance's group, and then there's some other groups that wanted to get involved. So now we're just like, okay, let's all get together
Yeah.
and pull that together. That would be the perfect place.
Yeah, and we'd really appreciate if you could get us connected. I think that's the perfect opportunity to get this information to people who really could provide a lot of important feedback.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
What is it called? Does it have a name or?
No, we haven't. They haven't
Okay.
had a name yet. And then it's just people just trying to say, how,
together.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good name.
Yeah. I know that some are meeting this Saturday, and some are meeting Sunday, and then some are meeting Monday. But we can get everybody under the same roof and put you in the room. That would be the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Do you meet monthly?
We meet weekly.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Any issue that comes up or pops off, we start talking about it. Now, we're looking at youth initiatives, youth programs, why they're not succeeding, why they're not progressing, do they need space? That makes sense? Because we got space, resources, but we're not connecting each other.
Part of it is just a lack of willingness to come together. Everybody, on an individual kind of initiative, and that's been
Oh, yeah.
part of the problem.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And everybody's saying, okay, we got past history, let's move on beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the seat of Urbana is now at stake, and so that's what we're coming together for. So it's kind of a grassroots organization that's happening.
Thank you. That's very, very great to know. So unless there's other questions, that was all I had for the staff report.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about the staff report? Thank you, Braden. So is there any unfinished business before the commission this evening?
No, there's no unfinished business.
Okay. And then the new business item is the annual action plan amendment memo, and you have that memo in your packet.
Yeah, and I'll just describe briefly what this is about. So we're requesting the annual action plan that I mentioned earlier. So we are unable to spend any of our CDBG money on anything that was not included in that plan that we originally submitted to HUD. So what we're requesting is an amendment to both our consolidated plan, our 2020-2024 consolidated plan, and our 2022-2023 annual action plan to add some eligible expense categories so that we can kind of expand the different projects that we work on. And part of it stems from COVID. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, we received kind of a big influx of federal money to deal specifically with COVID. So through CDBG, HUD provided some kind of special funds that could be used for things you can't typically use CDBG funding for. For example, rental assistance. That was how the city funded its rental assistance program in the spring of 2020. So when we got that huge chunk of money, city staff prioritized kind of spending all of that rather than kind of that traditional CDBG money that we had, just to get it out the door quickly to help, with the response to COVID. As a result of that, we've kind of ended up with a big balance left in our CDBG funding from previous fiscal years that we want to make sure we can also use in the community. So that was one of the reasons that we wanted to add some eligible expense categories to help give us more options for how we can use that money in the community. So specifically, we wanted to add capital improvement projects, including, which could possibly include, firehouse improvements or projects. So by adding those categories to the annual action plan and the consolidated plan, we'd be able to commit CDBG funding to a variety of projects that would specifically be targeted to our targeted neighborhoods, our low to moderate income neighborhoods. Examples of capital improvement projects could be lighting projects, sidewalk repair, curb replacements. We don't have any specific projects in mind right now, but those are, over the next year, potential projects that the funding could be committed to. So that's the reason for this amendment, is we're just hoping to have more ways that we can get this money into the community, because we have that big balance that it's a good problem to have. Having too much money is not usually the issue. So that's the reason behind the request for an amendment. And the options before you tonight would be to forward this to the committee of the whole with a recommendation for approval, or to forward it with, recommended changes. So we would recommend forwarding it to the committee of the whole with a recommendation of approval, so that we can get, like I said, get some of that funding out into the community. I know it's a little like in the weeds, so I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about how that works.
Okay, thank you, Braden.
Just on a side note, once it's through, will there be criteria set out for the community or people to have access or to apply for those? Because there might be some blocks.
Yes, and like I said, we don't have any specific projects identified yet, but absolutely, that would be a possibility. And again, it would specifically be for those targeted neighborhoods that we have identified in our annual action plan as being low to moderate income, because that's how HUD has it structured. In order to spend this money, you need to show that you're primarily benefiting those populations. So that will definitely be a factor as well.
I'm just referring, because when I first came on here, we had the issue in the past about funds that were set aside for lighting and never really materialized, and I just don't want us to fall back into that cycle, so that's what that was for.
Yeah, when we're dealing with something like this, you're kind of viewing it generally as capital improvements, which is pretty vague. I do notice there is mention in here of fire station activities. Is there something specific that's happens to be in there for?
Not at this time. The reason we added that was just to, again, give ourselves more options. If there are needs that the fire station has in order to increase services to, those neighborhoods in Urbana, we want to have the ability to, put together an RFP or be able to spend that money in some way. Again, because of the way HUD has it structured, if an item is not in your plan, you can't spend money on it. So it's more of just giving us options on how, if a need arises in the community, it's kind of a bummer. You realize that wasn't in our plan, So we try to be as general as possible so that we're able to really put the money where the need is. But we're not allocating specific amounts at this time. We're more just saying.
And I understand it. My concern is this, when we've done this in the past. So I've been around this commission, it's probably getting pretty close to 25 years. So this is probably about the 25th time I've brought this up, I guess. Something like that. Yeah, there you go. My concern is this: when we've gotten into this in the past with funds in the targeted areas. Purpose of CDBG funds, as I understand them, are for the improvement of target neighborhoods, not for the maintenance of target neighborhoods. So where the problem is in other areas in the city, if we had, say, fire department needs or street needs or curb needs, we fund those out of the general budget funds. When we take a neighborhood and say, we're going to do the same thing that we do everywhere else with general funds, and we're going to do it with CDBG funds, that in essence moves the maintenance from that neighborhood into the rest of the community. And as opposed to doing improvement with those funds, we are merely keeping the maintenance level correct. And that's what I always worry about when we start tagging funds like this for purposes like, for good purposes. Streets need to be repaired, fire departments need to be able to handle the needs of the community. But everywhere else in the city of Urbana, we do that out of general funds. We don't do it out of CDBG. So that would be my reluctance with this, is that when we tag funds like this to all of a sudden go to general purposes, those things should really be done from somewhere else, would be my thought. So,
And that's where I was kind of alluding to.
Mhm.
Yeah, I said, so thank you for saying.
So we've had some discussion. Are there other questions, comments? We have three options for this resolution. As Braden said, one, we can forward it as is, we can forward it with changes, or we can choose not to forward the resolution.
Make one comment?
Yes.
I appreciate the points, and that's definitely something that, you know, we need to take into consideration. What I'll say is, at this stage, it is kind of more broad and general. Any sort of agreements or any actual projects would also have to come not only before you, but also city council. So there is that ability for kind of additional discussion. So if there was some sort of project that you or city council felt was, oh, this is just maintenance, you know, why are we using CDBG? There's definitely that space for additional conversation when we get more to that project specific, you know, stage. So I appreciate that point, and I think, you know, for ongoing conversation, there will be that opportunity, you know, once we propose an actual project, you know, for, well, is this really appropriate, you know, things like that. So just to let everyone know, you know, it's not like this would stop here. This discussion can definitely continue when we get more to that project-specific
Yeah, and
level.
I should add, in fairness to the people who are in city administration now and on the board and everything else, that, and on the council, that this was somewhat in years past, but we just would not want to see an instance where we're fixing the potholes in one neighborhood out of one fund and out of everybody else's potholes out of the general fund. That's just not right. So with that stipulation in mind, that each of these are going to be individual projects that come back and be revisited, I think that's the only way to do it.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Braden. Any other comments or discussion around the options we have before us regarding this resolution? Is there a motion?
I move to, you do option one, to forward the resolution and recommend approval as stated here.
Thank you, Patty. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sean. Any further discussion? Okay, so all in favor of the motion to send the
I think for
resolution to...
this, do we need a voice vote? I mean,
Oh, you want to do a roll call vote?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
all right.
okay. Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Green,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Silvis,
Aye.
Commissioner Diana,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams. Thank you.
The ayes have it and the motion passes.
My yes was an aye. I was just trying to be facetious.
It was an aye, okay. So is there any other business to come before the commission this evening?
No other business, just a couple of reminders. As I mentioned earlier, before our October meeting, we will be having a public hearing on the annual action plan and local needs in the community. Again, if any of you are connected to groups that you might want us to come and present, that would be wonderful. Please let us know. And then also, as we kind of mentioned before the meeting started, just the new email system. So if you have questions about how to set that up, you can reach out to IT and they'll be happy to help you.
Okay. More email. And I just want to welcome our new commissioner, Deshaun Williams. Thanks for joining us. Good to have you. So we've reached the end of the items on our agenda, and we are adjourned.